Good afternoon and welcome to the studio special event, Back in the Game, presented as a part of Spark Festival. Today, we're joined by a panel of industry specialists to discuss how the Australian games industry is about to be accelerated or not by the new digital games tax incentive. Today, we're joined by Shane Yeend, Chairman and CEO of Gamestar, Ben Ayoub, Director of Policy and Government Affairs at IGEA, Ella Macintyre, Chief Product Officer at Mighty Kingdom, Cameron Rogers from Cam Rogers Legal, Sam McCool, comedian, MC, and content creator, and moderating today, Chantal Arbitra from the studio. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Thank you, and I'll hand over to Chantal now.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to all the panelists for being here today, and hi to the audience that we've got. We're going to have a really great attendance today, I think, on this. So please, as we go, pop any questions into the Q&A. Michelle will be putting links into the chat as well. We've got about 40 minutes, so we'll probably spend about the first half just having a wide-ranging discussion, and then the second half we'll answer questions, or we'll even answer questions as we go. So let's go first to Ella from Mighty Kingdom. Sorry to put you on the spot. So Mighty Kingdom is a really impressive independent game studio. They're Australia's largest independent game studio. Ella, can you talk about, we were just talking before we went live, talk about what's going on with the games industry just even now in the last year that you've seen from Mighty Kingdom.
Yeah, I think so. I guess just some background of where my perspective's coming from. I started my career as a filmmaker, just fresh out of uni, almost 10 years ago now, and have been at Mighty Kingdom for 8 years. And we started in a tiny studio behind a office, not a studio, behind a burrito shop in Adelaide, just off Morfett Street. And yeah, so I joined, I was probably employee number 5. We just hired our 143rd person on Tuesday, which is very exciting. And so I guess sort of when I sort of think back, 10 years ago when I joined the industry, very much recovering from a lot of lost talent from the global financial crisis. We had a lot of studios in Australia, and I'm sure Ben can give even better perspective of this. This is sort of, I was coming in after this had happened, but yeah, some overseas studios all kind of packed up and left when the dollar wasn't quite as attractive as it could have been. And I think a lot of people sort of had a sense of the lack of security and how dependent we were on external studios. So the people who stayed really had a entrenchment, I guess, in Australia. Stayed because they loved it, and they stayed because they loved games as well. It's traditionally not an industry people have, especially in Australia, have joined for the riches and glory. But I think in the last year we've seen a lot of a change towards a more commercial focus. I think there's been a lot of studios who have been sort of mixing. We've had a very good in Australia heritage of the over the last 10 years, the games that have been released have been a really fantastic artistic achievements and really sort of shining lights within that indie space. But over the last year, I think we've sort of seen the growth of and the return of a few AAA studios as well, with Sledgehammer up in Melbourne, and we have been able to find greater investment. I think the sort of impacts of COVID and everyone kind of staying at home and turning towards games, or shone a light on the people who are already playing games. Parents may be forced to see the amount of time and how important that is to their children's lives, possibly getting involved as well. So I think we've seen a lot of, not only a lot of growth and a lot of sort of commercialization of IPs that were in development, but also I think just a cultural shift and a cultural understanding amongst the Australian public of the impact that games have. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, just off the back of that, why don't we just take a step back and we'll introduce all the panel. Everyone from the panel can introduce themselves. So Ella, just talk about just quick introduction about your role at Mighty Kingdom.
Yes, so I am the Chief Product Officer. I basically work with our executive team to set our product strategy. I work with our teams to make sure that the games that we're making not only are fun, but they're also going to be profitable and make some money as well. And I also do some of our sort of new business development as well. We have a lot of partners that we work with. So I tend to have a bit to do with that as well.
Thank you. And maybe Ben, IGEA, maybe just quick little snapshot about IGEA for those that are joining this session that don't know what IGEA is.
No, thank you for having me. So IGEA, we're the industry association for the video games industry in Australia and New Zealand. We have probably getting close to 100 members now. And that includes dozens of kind of local game development studios like Mighty Kingdom, to the kind of the local presences of some of the largest games companies in the world, including Microsoft Xbox, Sony PlayStation, Nintendo, all the big AAA publishers, and one of our kind of most recent members, are Tencent Games, probably the world's largest games company. And my role in IGEA is to look after kind of policy and government affairs. And as a part of that, I look after IGEA's kind of advocacy. So, for the last few years, kind of amongst other things, we've really kind of pushed for the digital game tax offset. So, that's obviously something we're going to be talking a lot about today, but we're just so excited when the government included that announcement as a part of the budget.
Fantastic. And Cam, hey Cam, nice to meet you. And can you tell us about your work?
Yeah, thanks very much. It's great to be here. So Cam Rogers Legal is my firm. Specialises in digital entertainment with a particular focus on game development and distribution. So I've been working in games for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I worked in the film industry. I'm really interested in what lessons each industry can learn from each other, and particularly with the offset, how it's operated in the film industry for a number of years. I'm interested in sort of taking some of those learnings and seeing how it can apply to the games industry, which is currently going from strength to strength in Australia.
And Shane Yeend, tell us briefly, you've got an incredible background, but just give us a real snapshot of, what you're doing now, and just a couple of lines about your background as well.
Yeah, no, I've been sort of in the media and gaming business for 34 years and gaming for 25 plus. And about 20 years ago, I turned a board game business by writing the code to make the DVD box interactive into a $250 million company out of Adelaide with a couple hundred staff, with offices all over the world, working with all the AAA brands, and continued to do that until the tide went out in the DVD business. But I'm still the chief executive of Imagination, and we've got distribution into 82,000 retail stores. We ship all the AAA brands, and so we're already in business with them. We added apps to those games in those stores about 5 years ago and started tracking data on users and when they played and how they played in the board game experience, which is totally different to what Mighty Kingdom do. It's like polar opposites, in fact. In fact, our pitch is, basically everybody's using the phone to look at the phone and play games. We're the polar opposite. We're using the screen to control experiences between humans. And so I've just spun out another company. It's kind of funny because Reed Hastings and I used to talk on the phone, and he used to deliver my DVDs to houses when we were selling 1.7 million units of a game, of Deal or No, interactive Deal or No Deal on DVDs. And we couldn't pump that much information down a pipe back then. You remember when streaming first came out, it was buffering and this, whatever, and we need 50 lines of streaming. And so we've now stolen the CTO from Disney Plus, the head of Sony Interactive, got offices in LA and New York, and we've just spun out a company called Gamestar, which, think of it as the Netflix of games, everything from murder mysteries to birthday parties to every single major license in Hollywood you could think of. Hollywood loves a guy with a new category. When it turned up there were DVD games, no one had ever done it. built a category which took 30% of the board game business worldwide. We think we're going to do the same again. We've launched a 5 million raise in the public market and 5 million in the corporate market. And we're about $1 million off that, which will give us a $57 million market cap today. We've got a rock star team. We're backed by UTA and a bunch of A-list celebrities and the Disneys and every studio I could think of, really. And yeah, so we're basically going out now and trying to use the house as a theatre. You imagine we can use your lights, your screen, your mobiles to spin wheels on televisions, to controlling a three-dimensional experience to control social interaction between humans. So very different to what the rest of the gaming industry is doing. We've been operating in stealth mode for about 5 years. We've just come out, and I think at 1 million customers, we'll have a $600 million US market cap valuation before the end of next year.
Wow, Shane, it's super exciting, really impressive. And where are you located physically?
We're actually about 200 meters from Ella.
Right, okay, so you're in Adelaide, okay.
Yeah, all the good gaming companies come from Adelaide.
Fantastic. And lastly, but not least, we've got Sam McCool with us. So Sam, do you want to give us a quick sort of wrap of why you're part of this conversation? You're sort of almost representing the consumer here.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's last and least, actually, in this case. But anyway, having heard all those introductions, I think I'm going to start by saying I'm going to be Gamestar's newest investor, having heard Shane's pitch there. And you can go on the refundable.com and invest right there. So I've got the link ready. And after that pitch, Shane, I think I might be your newest investor. But I'm also a host, comedian, MC, etc. for live events, virtual events. I've created the world's first multicultural game show with Julie Morrow for The Chaser. And yeah, I'm just really excited about all the sort of opportunities within the gaming industry to see how that integrates with sort of virtual events and live events and things like that. I'm really impressed that Adelaide actually has a burrito store. I think that's probably where you guys could connect. I think that's exciting. Just even to learn that, I'm excited. So anyway, I'm here to listen and learn. So thank you.
Thanks, Sam. So let's just get back to what we're here to talk about. So the game sector is worth about $250 billion globally. At the moment, Australia, and these are, thank you, IGEA, for your figures.
I only want 40 of it.
Yeah, you only want 40 billion, yeah.
You can have the rest.
And but Australia only employs around 1,200 people, which is incredibly low. I'm sure the figures are probably a little bit higher than that now, and only generates about 180 million a year. So this is a huge opportunity that is about to really happen. What makes Australia unique in terms of being able to really leverage this opportunity? Who can I go to? Who wants to answer that?
Well, I've been through all these things before in the government rebates. You look at companies like Rising Sun. I used to work with Tony when I was 16, and Gail and Tony and whatever his name, Wayne, built my first interactive TV show when there was only 3 of them. But it's time, and you need to build talent over time, and you need to put these rebates in over time. And my left-handed general manager used to run Rising Sun, and they've got 250 people there now and A-grade talent. When I started Gamestar, went, you know what, I'm not going to do it in Adelaide anymore. I'm just going to do it in the US, because the talent pool runs dry really quick, and you need to build and attract and build and attract and build. It's what Mighty Kingdom are doing. They're way ahead of us in headcount. But talent in the end of the day wins, right? So we've now swung around, and our chief experience officer is based out of Adelaide, and we've built 2 studios in the last 6 months here. And we're constantly hiring up, because these incentives are, you add 30% on the dollar and then another 30%. It makes sense if we're going to spend, I don't know, $100 million in production to do it here, right?
And Ella, what have you seen to date with you? You've just told us previously you've had growth in terms of Mighty Kingdom. Where is the talent coming from? Are people returning back to Australia?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. We have benefited very much from the tax offsets that have allowed the VFX industry to grow. So Rising Sun, like Shane was saying, we've had a few other sort of large companies pop up in Adelaide specifically, but also in Australia. we tend to, I guess we sort of take two approaches. We look for adjacent industries. So we, like I said, a lot of VFX, sort of both on the production side and also on the art and technology side. But a lot of, crossover skill sets there. We invest heavily in our personal and professional networks to know who's sort of looking to come back. I think a lot of people we see leave the country, go and have a good time in Europe somewhere, and then thinking, actually want to raise my family next to my parents again, and we'll come back to Australia. So there's an element of that, but we also, I think, we do a lot of work in investing in talent and trying to find talent where other people maybe aren't looking. So we'll look for, we do a lot of hiring on potential and sort of try and identify what the opportunities are around, different particular talent pools. Again, like I said, sort of adjacent industries, but also we have a graduate program. So we build a lot of talent. We have 250 applicants a year for sometimes 5 positions. So there's a lot of people who are who are building the skills to enter the industry, and we try and pair them with some sort of more experienced people on their team to really grow that. And it means we sort of get, I guess, first pick of those students as well, because we're able to, get them before anyone else does in a kind of cynical way there. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a combination. I don't think that we would have really been able to experience the growth we have without that focus on on building the talent. I think we just sort of recognized early on that it was going to have to be something that we heavily invested in, and continue to do so, because it has been really beneficial.
Thank you, Ella. So Cam, as someone from the screen sector who's also works across the game sector, maybe can you just talk about how important it is, or what you've seen in terms of the industry and how it's continued to evolve, and how important potentially, VFX and post-production are as part of that mix as well, to really grow the sector and for people to potentially, I suppose, develop skills across various industries that they can, still creative industries, but bring them into the game sector.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been working in the screen industries for about 20 years and come from a film background. So very used to working with producers in the film set that, utilize the offset in the film industry in various ways, being able to borrow against it so that you can fund the projects that you're working on. And in contrast, when I started getting into games, it really was, as kind of Ella has mentioned, just people doing it for the love of it. And it was a very much a hit-driven industry. When I first started getting into it, it was the early days of iOS games. And you'd see kind of, projects be spectacularly successful, but it wasn't evenly distributed across all of the studios and the people that were working here. I think that, one of the good things about the offset is going to be an ability to, to model growth in a lot of these types of small to medium-sized games companies. And once they've got that kind of revenue behind them, they're going to be able to bring people back from overseas, because as Ella was saying, and speaking with my clients, it's been a struggle. There's this sort of gap between the graduates and the experienced people in certain niche roles, like narrative designers or project leads and things like that all have to go overseas to kind of continue their careers. As the studios in Australia build, there'll be roles for those people, and hopefully we can get them back, and the brain drain kind of ceases. So, and I'm already seeing examples of that. The news of the offset resulted almost immediately in a lot of kind of interest from foreign investors. So a lot of my clients are fielding kind of interest from large overseas organizations where, as Shane was saying, Australia has just sort of instantly become more attractive for investment. The creativity and the ability was always here. It was just less appealing because there was no tax benefit to being here. The dollar, it was stronger for a while, and yeah, we're starting to see things even out. So I think it's a really exciting time to be building a game studio in Australia. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Ben, maybe just if you want to comment on that. I mean, what have you seen from, you know, your perspective in terms of working behind the scenes with government and policy? You know, what have been the real drivers? I suppose why now is the question.
I mean, it's been a journey over many years of really talking to policymakers and politicians and agencies who have still been learning about video games. Whenever we talk about the scale of the industry, in terms of the audience, all the people around the world that love games, and as well as just the numbers in terms of revenue and sales and investment and trade, it's really shocking to policymakers sometimes when they try to understand the kind of the economic scale of the sector. You know, when we talk about, you know, we ask policymakers what they think Australia's most successful cultural exports are. They don't think games, but you know, in terms of finances, it is games. And whenever we talk about, you know, the small number of Australian exports that can be found in every country around the world, you know, games is there, but it's not often thought about. So why now? I think just a real flood of understanding about the sector and about games, and seeing examples of Australian games that have really found kind of great success overseas. That's been really eye-opening for governments, and I think jobs. You know, the federal government, you know, its decision to introduce an offset is really framed around investment, trade, and jobs, and it's not just jobs for jobs' sake, but it's the types of jobs that are being created in games. And we talk a lot about how games is a perfect kind of balance between kind of technology skills and creativity. And I think a few, you know, my fellow kind of panel members here have spoken about, you know, they've come from different backgrounds, you know, film, but not just film. That there's obviously a great link between film and games, but you know, games are being used in sectors like health, education, science, defense, and game developers are often, you know, one of the most kind of highly sought after kind of workers in the tech space. I think Cam's talked about it a little bit already, and I saw one of the comments, I think from Connor, talk about the graduates, that there's a real kind of influx of graduates, and not all of them right now, you know, traditionally they've not always been able to find a job in the sector because we're so much smaller than the sector has been in Canada and the UK and the US. The offset will change that, and certainly one of the experiences of the sector over the last few years is that the really experienced Australian developers, they've had to go overseas, which means we've lost this strata, I guess, of experienced developers and team leaders and managers, and studios here kind of really need to rely on those people to train up the graduates that are coming through, and there's such talent. So we need to make sure that we kind of leverage that talent. And I think with the offset, many of the experienced Australians are coming back, and I think we're also kind of working to make sure that studios can access the right visas to attract talent where that talent is not available. And I think over the next few years, there'll probably be a bit of kind of teething while studios scale up and those jobs start kind of coming in. But certainly within a few years' time, it's going to be really, really exciting.
Fantastic. And Ella's just sort of put a comment in the chat that, you know, Ben and also, you know, of course, IGEA have been relentless in educating, you know, policymakers on the opportunities to be had in games. And that's absolutely, it wouldn't be without the work of Ron and Raylene at, you know, and your team, that this has obviously come about. I believe there is a dedicated visa, a global talent visa, to be able to bring talent into Australia, and that's really being targeted, I think, for specific people to really help, you know, boost the sector. I think, you know, if there's any questions, Shane, I'll just say this and then we'll come to Shane and Sam, but please pop any questions into the Q&A we've got quite a big audience on this session, so please throw any questions in and the panel will answer them. So Shane, I mean, you're someone who's been in the sector for a long time. What is really exciting is that you keep reimagining what games is for you and how you see it. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what you see the opportunities are now from your perspective.
You know what? Yeah, I'm old. I've got an office full of 20-year-olds now. It's fantastic. And you know what? Handing down the baton to those kids, some of them are geniuses. And I think Ben's right. It's really about hiring, and Ella, I guess, it's hiring the younger next generation and putting them through, my Rolodex and deal making and joining that to, a bunch of talent and making some great things happen. And it's time though, because I think you watch Rising Sun, and Rising Sun, they've been a boom and bust business forever, right? When the dollar was at par, they bust. When the dollar's at 30 off, Hollywood rushes here to get their thing. So that rebate thing is genius, and we haven't had anything to do with it. And for that to pop up in my inbox, thank you all, because we probably spend more on games than anybody in the country now. And that's 30% back. It's just genius. It'll give us, more dollars and more talent and a reason to build a bigger basis here. So, you know what? I like finding, getting back to your question, the value's in the gray area. I always used to go, hey, you know what? You can, if you catch other people's waves, you get sore arms. And you look at, I was building mobile games when there was only 5 games on the deck when I set up M Games and Legion in the 90s. And we had the number 2 game on the deck. So, mobile games to me are a little bit, don't take this the wrong way, Ella, but they're all a bit the same. It's the Subway Surfer or the Bunny or the this or the whatever. I've tried to find the value in the gray areas over the years, and I've played in a totally different business. And it's kind of funny to watch Hasbro do a deal with EA and it bomb out, because even the best video game makers don't understand our audience. And the proof's in the consumer experience, right? But the value is in the gray area. And, we've taken a very different tact to most others. And to be honest, we're probably, on the sidelines. We really haven't engaged, and not many people know what we do. Part of that refunder thing was Steve Harvey, and he was friends with Damon, and Damon's now a shareholder, and Damon's got a private room, and it had to be, the public part for his private room had to be dealt with somewhere, so it got dealt with on refunder. So we had to let our secret out of the bag. But, to have 10 million US in the bank and still be private and still do deals and to spin that company out, it's good for us. But you know what, all I wanted to do is, I wrote a business plan for John Malone in 2006, and John Malone owns Liberty Media, Formula One, this, whatever. And I got someone to write an app that would interact with TV in a bar. So I could walk into a bar and interact with the TV, not unlike NTN BuzzTime, which used to be a publicly listed company in the States where you could go and play trivia with the old wireless phone technology. And how can I do that on an app? And so when I put that together in 2006, I wrote a business plan that sort of said, maybe the app is the entrepreneur's holy grail for interactive TV. And we were going to roll up the Game Show Network, NTN, us and Ping or whatever, and do a publicly listed company. And we were about to be sold. My share was about 180 million US, and the deal didn't get signed on the day of the GFC. So how's that for bad luck? There goes the Gulfstream. But I'm doing the same thing. I'm really just using media. When I worked for Mike Policy and Current Fair and 6 Minutes, you used to, media was such a powerful thing. And so using media to control experiences in a room, I've been doing that my whole life. And to cut the supply chain out of delivering a game experience where humans communicate, something like Cards of Humanity is worth $500 million, and it's a card game with some words on it. We sell, I don't know, you look at, Mighty Kingdom's revenue is probably, what, 6 million? We sell $15 million US just to the Family Feud card games. And we've got 100 other items. So it's a very, very different business. And so the value was in the gray area. How do I take streaming, which is really a one-dimensional product at the moment. You hit it, you play it. In DVDs, it was a one-dimensional product. How do I put packets and jumble up video to be able to play games and control experiences in a room? And so to build that and to build the stack for that, and our partners are the dudes who built the Call of Duty stack, and our stack's 87% identical to Disney Plus and Netflix. For us to find that, to be able to use games as the driver to interactive TV in the home, and then you can take your mobile over to somewhere else and interact in their home and track data and all of that. I've basically reimagined the whole industry. And if I can deliver, and we're still out delivering, but it's a lifetime's worth of work to find that gray area. And we've pretty much got ourselves a couple of year head start. It's led by content, and we spent 5 years on the content roll-up. And once you've got people play games they know how to play, if you have to teach people a new game, it's very hard. So once you lock up all the most famous brands and all the most famous talent and really good tech from USC, this or whatever, and add it all and put it in a blender and deliver it up into the home, I may walk out of this being responsible for interactive streaming in the home, which makes your TV an interactive thing and basically a cash box.
Thank you, Shane. I'm going to stop you there because I think we could just talk all day because it's fantastic what you're doing. Someone that does work in the grey area is Sam McCool. Maybe we can throw to you. And we've something's happened with the sound now. So maybe talk about Sam. You're someone that crosses from screen into games into a whole range of areas. What's this going to mean to you? Can you just? I think something's going on with sound there.
With my sound?
Yeah, your sound. Just maybe go back a little bit, or we'll, yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, I don't know. Something. Just talk. Say something.
My voice, I think.
No. We'll come back to you. Okay, let's go to some questions now. We've got. I knew we were going to get these questions. This is from Anna. Can you comment on blockchain play-to-earn game development? I'm hoping Cam or Ben, this might be, or even Ella, this might be an area you want to comment on.
I can go first. I mean, look, there's obviously been a lot of interest in the blockchain kind of area over the last year or so. I haven't done a lot of work in that space. I understand the kind of the application of it and how it could be kind of useful, particularly not only in games, but also in legal tech. I think it's kind of ripe for opportunities there, but I haven't had many dealings directly with it, so I can't really comment specifically on the operational side of it or the legal framework in Australia, unfortunately.
Ella?
Yeah, I think, as you say, it's very much a question we could have expected for sure. I think it's not something that we at Mighty Kingdom have particularly pursued. I think there's for a variety of reasons. I think the applications around it, especially on the pay to earn space, I know a lot of people are very interested in sort of, when we're making games, especially free to play games, which play to earn games tend to be, we're always looking at like, how can we add value for our users? How can we create an entertainment experience that's also really, enriching and a place that people want to really, they're happy to sink that time into, because that's how we see our revenues back. And I think a lot of people see the opportunities around pay to earn as something that is, as a natural extension of a free to play environment. There's been a lot of really interesting stuff as well around, I guess, as sort of like as a stopgap around player-driven economies, and a few games that are doing really interesting things around that. I think there's a lot of people for me, this is me purely speaking as like a nerd and not in my capacity as a person who works at Mighty Kingdom, but I think a lot of people also are really interested in the outcomes in terms of like virtual communities, and I speak to a lot of people who are strategy game creators and sort of city builders and building virtual economies and things like that. So I think just on a purely entertainment point of view, there's a lot of sort of, I guess, additional or sort I don't like to use the word metaverse because it's a bit of a meme at this point, but you know, it's easy to kind of see the way that those things can kind of there's a natural extension there in the ways that new communities become autonomous, and a lot of the things that we try and do on the game design side that can really be enabled by that. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where as game developers, we tend to, one thing we kind of haven't really discussed here is just how risky it can be to be a game developer, and just in terms of cost of capital or cost of talent, as we were saying, and the, you know, as much as it's a huge market, it also means there's a lot of competition. And you know, I speak to a lot of high schoolers, and it's never been easier to make a game. It's never been, but it also means that everyone's making a game. So yeah, I think we sort of tend to sort of play in our space. We look for the grey areas too, and that tends to be sort of young women and their mums. It's sort of how we think of our traditional market, who tend to be underserved in every area of entertainment. So yeah, it's not something that we particularly set our sights on, but I think as sort of models that are, you know, proven models come out and are sort of adopted by the mainstream, that's sort of when we look at our times. And that isn't even, you know, covering all of the you know, environmental impact conversations and all of that kind of stuff. So there's sort of a few reasons we haven't really dove into it. I don't think there's many. I mean, Ben can probably speak to this a bit better than me, but I don't think there's a huge number of what I would call the incumbent game developers looking at blockchain necessarily. It's a great way to start a conversation with an investor, though. So, you know, we try and keep aware of it in that way. But yeah, maybe Ben can speak to that a bit more.
Yes, Ben, if we can go to you, we've got a question also around this topic from Connor Stack. It's really sort of similar. How do you foresee NFTs and blockchain shifting the gaming landscape?
Look, just looking at it with a lens of what's happening now and you know, the months and years into the future, and recognizing there's a real diversity of views on this topic. There are, you know, as Ella mentioned, a lot of the incumbents, the major game development companies that have traditionally been in the sector, they're certainly, they've been more cautious on this, or at least publicly, they've been more cautious on this. But we are seeing, you know, smaller independent companies really try to understand this part of the sector. I think, like the rest of the blockchain and NFT kind of space, it's a lot of experimentation, still kind of working things out. It will be a much different discussion in 12 months' time if we were to have this. I do think there are some Australian companies that are really at the forefront of understanding what opportunities may come from this, which just means I think Australia as a landscape for game development, it makes it attractive, because it means people are taking risks, kind of experimenting, both in terms of the games and the platforms for games, and there's a lot of discussion going on about kind of collaboration and really trying to push the envelope. Certainly one of the reasons, you know, without the reasons for the digital games tax offset, you know, while blockchain and NFT and technologies like that, you know, weren't part of, you know, why the offset was introduced, innovation certainly was. A real recognition that game development studios are often trying different things and really trying to look at what interactive media can become in the future. And if I were to put my consumer hat on, I do know a lot of game players. You know, they love games, but the idea of having, you know, playing a game and then being able to, you know, create something or obtain something within that game that's underpinned by you know, those new technologies, that's appealing to them. So I think, final sentence, let's talk again in 12 months and talk about all the changes that may have happened by then.
Thanks, Ben. And just anyone who's interested in diving a bit further into this, the studio's hosting same time next Wednesday, a session on NFTs, particularly with a really great panel called The Rise of Crypto Art, but we're looking at NFTs also in the game space. We're hoping to be joined by someone from Immutable, which is a new platform specifically for NFT trading. So Cam, maybe this is a good time to come to you. What are you seeing in this space? Are you sort of seeing more activity in this space from your perspective?
With respect to NFTs and things like that, I mean, yeah, look, I mean, the area of, I've sort of seen it is not even on the game dev side, it's more of my kind of influencer clients, that some of whom will sink, you know, thousands of hours into these games of live streaming, and you sort of have very little to show for it at the end of the day. So I definitely see a space for some sort of NFT type acknowledgement of the number of hours that have been put into the games, or a certain achievement for completing you know, open world games and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of interest around it, as there is in blockchain generally. And yeah, there's a number of different applications for it, and a number of different ways that people are kind of getting in. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it kind of plays out over the next 12 months or so, that's for sure.
Thank you, Cam. We've got a question here, so we'll wrap up shortly. If anyone's got any final questions, please pop them in the chat. This is from Joel. What are in terms of, for all the panelists, what are their thoughts about the convergence between games and film TV sectors in virtual production, and the future of where that tech is going? I know, Joel, that AFTR's Australian Film, Television, Radio School have got a session coming up on this called Digital Futures. And they're actually building a virtual production studio that's underway at the moment. So that could be something, a better sort of forum to ask that in. Does anyone want to answer this question?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think one thing that has been, I guess, for me, exciting about virtual production and things like that, also just, again, as a background in film, I sort of think, oh, where was this 10 years ago? But I think, yeah, what is exciting is there's a lot of crossover in technology, especially when you sort of think of Unreal Engine and sort of the tools that are used to create those environments that can be used in both a virtual production sense and also in a game sense. I think the closest thing that we've seen previously to that has been similar technology used in animations, and what those sort of how each of those productions kind of work in harmony, and find a lot of efficiencies in terms of the asset creation and development. Sort of, you know, you make one asset that can be used in your animation and then also in your game. What I would say though, in order for that to be really, you know, to make the most of that opportunity though, would be, I think is going to require a real sort of coming together from both the film industry and the games industry in terms of what each production process requires. And, you know, in film, you kind of point a camera at a thing and you don't really, you know, you as the filmmaker have control, whereas in games it's tends to be a much more sort of open opportunity for users to explore. So just the way that a filmmaker thinks about, you know, the corner of a set, as opposed to the way a game developer thinks about the entire world that they're creating. Yeah, I think there's a lot of crossover, a lot of opportunity, but also I think it's, you know, it's probably going to be as we were saying before, maybe a few teething problems around just how we can get those pipelines working together and really sort of you know, approaching those projects from sort of day one as a collaborative opportunity, as opposed to sort of an opportunistic experience. I would say just there's, you know, it's easy to maybe be fooled into thinking, oh, I can take some shortcuts here with some unreal environments that have been created or something. But yeah, when you sort of get into the complexities of both game development and VFX production, it becomes, and film production, it just is it can be a recipe for a lot of challenges. So yeah, I think it will be interesting to see what sort of, this is getting really on the boring game dev side, but what kind of processes and production best practices emerge from this kind of technology.
Thank you, Ella. I mean, hopefully what AFTRS are sort of are doing with this new virtual production studio is actually really going to allow that sort of experimentation to take place. So that's super exciting. I'm really interested to see where they're going with that. We've got probably this will be our final question. Thank you, Paulius. So where do you see VR in the near, medium, long term? We've been hearing about it since late 90s and seems like there are a lot of developments, but is it looked at seriously by the games industry? Who'd like to answer that? Sam McCool. No. Ben?
Happy to. It's always difficult kind of talking about this topic because as you've said, we always seem to be on the cusp of something that is really transformative. And I know this recording will be made public, so I'm putting myself a bit of a risk here, but I still feel as though there is a kind of a really deep kind of potential that is still emerging, and I think it's taken a little bit. We've heard a lot about it over the last few years, while the technology continues to improve. And I think both the people that are creating the technology, as well as the developers who are developing games for those technology, are really kind of fine-tuning what it is they're doing and the market for it. And there is still so much work kind of going on. And one of our most recent members that have joined IGEA is Facebook Gaming, who own Oculus, technology, and it's clear that there's so much kind of investment and work in game development still going on. So I think this is still going to be a really big part of gaming in the future. But I would also say, when we're talking about virtual reality, and kind of gaming technologies in that space, it's not just entertainment. So some of Australia's kind of most successful independent game development studios, they are doing a lot of work in VR, AR, MR for simulation, for training, training surgeons or training law enforcement. And some of these companies, and they're not all game studios, some are, in adjacent sectors, but they're all using the same technology. And we often don't hear about those because they're not for the consumer market. But Australian companies and the talented people that are, working on those projects, they're some of the world leaders. So even that side alone, just focusing on that, it's incredibly exciting.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, and we also, the studio, we're an incubator for tech startups, with a focus on communications, creative industries, but across all sectors. So we actually do end up we've had a number of different startup companies we've incubated at the studio over the last few years in health, working in VR, AR, in mixed reality, in health and in real estate, and some other areas that have gone on to scale and be quite successful. And they're still on their journey, so you may not have heard about them. So let's wrap up now. It'll be great to just get some final sort of thoughts from everyone about what the big opportunities are for Australia in terms of this new incentive. What is it about Australia that makes us unique from the rest of the world that is really going to turbocharge the game sector? Let's go to you, Cam. Put you in the hot seat to end, and we'll just go around and get some final words from everyone.
Yeah, look, I think that the game development industry in Australia has for too long sort of been in the shadow of the film industry. I think that this offset kind of creates an even playing field for Australian developers and developers internationally. There's always been the talent here. There's always been the technical folks here. It's just having the right kind of revenue models in place that allows teams to scale, and through the work of IGEA and other kind of advocates, that day is finally here. So it's a super exciting time to be working in Australia in game development.
Ella, some final words from you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo a lot of what Cam was saying. I think, yeah, definitely puts us on a more even playing field, and I hope will attract, we often think about the industry as an ecosystem, one that needs big and small players, because they all sort of feed into each other, in addition to those adjacent, film and entertainment industries. So yeah, I mean, I definitely expect and welcome more, opportunities for talent to find their place in Australia, and hopefully, I know that everyone will benefit from that, because it can grow the industry, and we as a country tend to on a per capita basis very underrepresented in terms of game development. I believe our founder Phil Mays sort of did the maths, and we would need to double the number of game workers in Australia in order to sort of start being up there with your even your New Zealands and and other countries like that, in order to really sort of be properly represented on a per capita basis. So yes, hopefully this will bring us towards some parity there, and yeah, grow the opportunities for everyone, from senior talent returning from overseas, but really bring some mentors in for the huge number of very talented grads that are coming through our education systems at the moment as well.
Thanks, Ella. Shane, some final words.
You know what? I think Australians are, top of their field when you get on a plane and go over and sell ourselves and get work. I've been doing it my whole life. I know the United Kingdom guys do it. I often have breakfast with it in LA. Everyone, we can get on a plane, we go and get the work, and then to have this, to have this offset, it really does swing around and give us a head start. And we look at it and go, wow, we can do 30% more work and hire 30% more people. So it's genius for us, and we haven't had anything to do with it. So thank you all. But I just love it that we can get on planes and go and get the work. It's actually, we've got to come home and do it. And to be able to have an ecosystem and a financial system that works, because Rising Sun's only another 500 meters from us, and they get it. And so for us to get it in games is just genius. And we're not making that much difference. We're in the crossover between streaming and gaming. So we're right in between the two and special effects. So for us to be able to access the same thing, we're on par, it's game on.
Fantastic. And so Ben, and then we'll come to you, Sam, some final words. And just something on the 30%. I believe that various states also have another 10% as well. So you've actually got 40% offset.
Plus the dollar, that's another 30.
Yeah, so it's looking good. So Ben, some final words?
Yeah, no, I was going to use this opportunity to call out, the states, South Australia, Victoria, and, as of, a couple of weeks ago, New South Wales, providing a rebate. And I think combined with the federal kind of policy change, it's really a signal of ambition by policymakers that they do want to make Australia, and we believe it's possible to make Australia the best place in the world to make games, with these incentives, as well as the talent that's here. We are hearing, Cam's already mentioned that, there's a lot of kind of talk going on in the global sector, and that's exactly what's happening. There's so much interest in the global game sector, in coming to Australia, investing in Australia, setting up studios, ramping up studios, that I think it's just a really exciting time. And I know for, some of the people, like listening in and watching today, if they are interested in exploring, getting into, or really scaling up their activities in game development, I just want to recognise in Australia, Austrade, as well as all the state and territory trade and investment bodies, every single one of those agencies, and we speak to them regularly, they have some of the best people there to explain what's available and to really provide the assistance to get this activity happening. So please feel free to reach out to them, and we as an association, of course, you're always welcome to reach out to us, and we can provide a little bit of support and advice when we can.
Thanks, Ben. And we also, you know, the studio, we're always connecting people, introducing people, so we can always put you in touch with Ben and IGEA and the other agencies. So Sam, I think, you know, you're a creative, a content creator. You know, technology knows no boundaries. So, you know, who knows what you'll cook up within this space.
Yes, no boundaries except for my sound issues earlier. But I just want to make a comment on Shane and Anna's point. I mean, Shane, doing 30% more work is un-Australian, first of all. So I'm not sure that's, you know, something we should be applauding. 30% more work, you said. But if it means catching up to New Zealand, as Ella pointed out, that we're lagging behind New Zealand, then that's probably a good thing. And if it means getting more people to move to Adelaide and South Australia, then it's obviously all very positive. But I have a brilliant game idea that no one's addressed yet. So who to pitch it to and how best to pitch it? That's what I want to know.
Shane, pitch it to Shane, I reckon.
In the grey space.
Just email me. We have a big team.
All right. Okay. All right. Good. I'll email you. All right.
Excellent.
Call me.
Oh,
Call him.
Yes. All right. Great. Cool.
We'll put you two in touch. Look, this could be the beginning of something really beautiful. So watch this space. If it happens, you know, we'll get you both back on. We'll do a session around, you know, how you built the next sort of
the story. That's
well, this is how exciting the games industry is. Even the panel talking about it, deals are potentially getting done. So
yeah.
It's almost a game in itself, watching the chat and the Q&A and everything else going on. There's, you know, you split focus, right? But I would like to know more from Cameron Rogers, maybe not now because I know you're wrapping up, but about the idea of borrowing against a tax offset. I think that's really interesting. And obviously as well, just pitching things in the TV and film space and realizing the potential and the capacity of the gaming industry to be much more lucrative and also more exciting. So I think that's really interesting. And just that there was a comment about the virtual space and gaming. I had a meeting the other day with a client who's a major computer organization, global computer organization, and they are incorporating gaming into their virtual events as well. So I think there's a lot of crossover space that can be explored, you know, the grey space.
Fantastic. That's a great way to end, Sam. And you've got the whole team here. You know, every person on this panel is someone that, you know, could help make this happen. So
very legal advice from Cam Rogers. That's I mean, that's the most, if I can get that out of him, that's probably the best outcome today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for your wisdom, for your time and your generosity. This has been a really great conversation, and look forward to catching up again soon in person, hopefully one of these days. Bye.